Thor Love Thunder released in theaters this past weekend, making it the 6th movie and 13th project within Phase 4 of the MCU, while also making Thor the first hero to get a 4th film. Now, Phase 4 has largely been construed as a janky, random mess of a phase, and Thor 4 had a lot riding on it due to people's expectations and fears from an underwhelming phase thus far. So, the question for today is whether Thor Love Thunder was able to rise above said expectations, or is it just another step in the staircase, that being a discombobulated phase? So let's get right into it. This is a fun movie. I don't remember hearing people laugh so loud and openly in the theaters since, heck, probably Ragnarok. Taika Waititi and Chris Hemsworth have made it clear that they are masters of comedy, but maybe not masters of balancing comedy with drama, pacing, and stakes. This film has a lot going for it. The visuals are stunning, powerful, and awe-inspiring, and the music alongside it makes it easy to feel hyped up during the action sequences and the montages. This is a fun film that never lets up on comedy, but that may be its biggest shot in the foot. The first act is very fast. Tons of things are being thrown at you to set up the many arcs and storylines, with hearing Jane has cancer to seeing her pick up Mjolnir all in about 4 minutes. Thor goes
from dead bod to god bod,
depressed and drunk from Endgame to a hippie joke of his former self. The film is under 2 hours, with supposedly another 2 hours of footage being tossed to the curb, and it wants all of these arcs and storylines to have time to breathe, and so it rushes through the beginning and gives answers later as its approach, rather than letting the intrigue build naturally as you incorporate more plot lines. This just kind of throws it all out there within the first 20 minutes and expects you to keep up. Now, I was constantly thinking throughout the film, oh, this would be a great script. However, it seems like they took that script and adapted it as literally as possible without giving the right time to separate moments so that each scene could have its time in the spotlight. Even the transition for Gore from I love you God to I hate you God was remarkably swift and definitely took me out of the film for at least a second. Christian Bale does give one of his better performances here, but that's not enough to mask the flaws with adapting the script. Now, Fast is great for comedy. Fast comedy is enjoyable and offers a wild ride when done right. Ragnarok was very much a funny space rock opera with fast, witty dialogue, but both films struggle with balancing that fast-paced comedy with more emotional notes and times when things are about to get serious. Ragnarok was harshly criticized for taking the easy or funny way out when something serious was about to happen, and I think Taika and Chris both wanted to improve upon that, especially for the romantic and more emotional arcs going on in Thor Love Thunder. However, they kept the fast-paced, and heck, they probably even sped it up for this film.
What would really annoy the fans? That's really the only thing that I'm interested in. What do the fans don't want? Let's find out what the fans don't want on Reddit, and then that'll be the next Thor film for me.
No real arc has that much time to breathe, at least not the amount that any deserved, and so when we did get to those moments, with either Gore and his wrath and revenge for his daughter, Jane with her weakness from cancer, or Thor with losing his new best friend momentarily, and then later his true love, none of them hit nearly as hard as they could have and probably should have. The film is racing towards the finish line, and then when it gets there, the care isn't there, and some things simply just don't quite add up. There are a lot of plot holes when you consider the lack of logical thinking that is in this film. Now, I won't ruin the film for you in case you thought it was one of the best, but if there was any rational thinking God, eternity would never have been an issue, Jane would never have died, and Thor wouldn't be a wanted man by all of Omnipotent City. Now, I'd like to say that 10 more minutes within this film would definitely help all the arcs to have more time to breathe, more time to be fleshed out, and more chances for those emotional moments to land and connect with its audience. However, even then, I'd be worried what they would decide to do with those extra 10 minutes. It's obvious from the film that Taika and Chris were more focused on delivering another MCU comedy hit, rather than the best story possible for a new Thor adventure. And so let's just say that the film definitely did not need 10 more minutes of love triangle jokes between Thor, Stormbreaker, and Mjolnir. Which leads me to the actual humor itself. This is actually quite controversial amongst the fans so far from what I've seen. I'm hearing some people who hated the film for making Thor the butt end of a lot of jokes, and I'm seeing some people praise the film for how funny it was. Now, all I can really say is on first watch, I heard a lot of people laughing, and I was chuckling quite a bit myself. I think Ragnarok had the funnier moments, but Love and Thunder was probably the more consistent film with its comedy. There's also a lot of cringy humor in here, such as the love triangle I mentioned. However, as someone who grew up with The Office and Parks and Rec, I happily welcome back some cringy humor, and I think Hemsworth's performance absolutely made it work. Heck, even Portman executed her bits of comedy perfectly. But let's pivot a bit here from the fast and funny and more into the furious, in particular Christian Bale as Seth Sun Villano and his black sword Nightblood. Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher. I really liked this character and I loved Christian Bale's performance, but again, the balance of tone between his serious and somewhat sinister scenes, wow, try saying that 10 times fast, to the fast and flashy scenes with Thor and co was quite off-putting. Gore was straight up horrifying at parts, and yet the film itself felt like it wasn't taking him seriously. Thor certainly wasn't. Bale certainly was able to capture the pain and loss he felt, and thus the wrath he held towards the gods. There were times where this movie got religious and cynical, and it only worked due to Bale's portrayal of the character. That said, I think Gore was highly underutilized by this film, and perhaps killed off too soon. Gore is a great character who brings a lot to the table in the comics, one being a time travel adventure for Thor with him teaming up with other versions of himself, including an old Thor Odin's son. Gore is a villain that the MCU needs if it wants a way to balance out the infinite number of gods that are being introduced within Phase 4. Sure, Gore is no Thanos, and certainly not a villain worthy of several phases of build-up, but having Gore in the background as a looming threat, in my opinion, is a missed opportunity, especially if their plan is to have a dozen different mini-sagas all competing for our attention at once, as things are currently being carried out. I also think the Necrosword was underdeveloped and underutilized as well. It has a rich and awesome lore in the comics, and for all of that to amount up to a throwaway line from Thor in the middle of a fight kind of felt like a slap to the face for fans. Now, I do think that the overarching problem here with this movie has less to do with the film itself and more about Phase 4 overall and the rather low ratings and expectations that it's been garnishing. Thor Love and Thunder was not a garbage movie. A lot of people are saying that it's got to either be god tier or garbage. This is not either. It's a mid movie, but it was a lot of fun, and though it does have problems like everything else in Phase 4, it's still a movie that I can't wait to rewatch and enjoy. Now, Phase 4 is a very awkward phase as it's trying so hard to set up so many things to come without any immediate or obvious repercussions for most of its projects. Sure, Loki and WandaVision tied into Spider-Man 3 and Doctor Strange 2, but as of right now, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Moon Knight, Hawkeye, Ms. Marvel, Shang-Chi, and Eternals are all projects that feel like they're in limbo. They're setting things up, that's to be sure, but as of right now, they feel like they're just kind of there. It's a problem as things stand due to the nature of the MCU, a global phenomenon that is all about interconnected stories and characters who can pop up in anyone else's project. No matter who it is, it would make sense, and it would largely get a cheer out of the fans. And so the MCU, with Phase 4, has been struggling with walking that fine line between inserting cameos and delivering a solid story. I don't think any project in Phase 4 has really hit it out of the park yet, except for maybe Spider-Man No Way Home. A couple doubles here and there, but nothing extraordinary that stands alone on its own merits, such as Iron Man or Captain America the Winter Soldier. Those were both great films that had cameos and did set up future films, but they were mainly prioritizing their own solid story first and foremost. Now, I do not mean to belittle Marvel Studios or these projects within their grand plan. I'm almost positive that when we look back after the next huge film event, most likely Secret Wars, we'll enjoy going back and rewatching these 500 different projects and seeing how they all tie together. And I also don't mean to say that I haven't enjoyed any of these projects. I've enjoyed all of them. WandaVision was a true community experience, Hawkeye was a blast, and Shang-Chi was one of the most fun MCU films I've seen in theaters. But as of right now, each project is walking on a tightrope as it has huge shoes to fill and tons of things to balance. And so with Thor Love and Thunder, it's a weird catch-22 as it fits into this problem, and yet it also suffers from a lack of setup. The first act flies by with too much being thrown at you to set up the arcs for the film, yet things like Gore, the Necro Sword, Jane's cancer, and transition to the Mighty Thor have basically no setup. I mean, look, this year alone, we've gotten Moon Knight and Ms. Marvel, and we'll be getting a She-Hulk series next month. Was there really no way to introduce and set up the Necro Sword in a Disney Plus series if it was 100% impossible to set it up properly in Thor 4? Phase 4 has been introducing new gods left and right, Celestials and Eternals, Egyptian gods and Moon Knight, and now Olympian gods with Thor Love and Thunder. It's also been incorporating mythological and supernatural creatures like the Great Protector Dragon in Shang-Chi and demons in Doctor Strange 2. With all these godly or godlike powered beings, you'd think this is a great time and place to introduce Gore the God Butcher, and you'd think it would be easy to throw in the Necro Sword somewhere to give us at least a little bit of exposition and proper setup. Now, it is the MCU, and there's no shortage of ways to bring back Gore and or the Necro Sword, whether that be through the multiverse or simply with some other god who can bring them all back, but as of right now, they're both gone, and so is their legacy and threat to the gods. The only one in danger now is Thor, with Hercules on the hunt. And so, as of right now, it really does seem like the MCU's legacy ended with Endgame. They've got a lot of pots in the fire as they work their way towards Secret Wars and multiversal battles, but as of right now, Phase 4 has been rising tempers and lowering expectations for each MCU project. And it feels like Thor Love and Thunder is the one to take the brunt force of that negativity, because again, a lot was riding on this one. We are 13 projects into Phase 4, 13, and it's shaping up to be an average, if not below average phase that feels awkward and confused. I saw a comment on another video here on YouTube that Phase 4 has been a building powder keg, and Thor Love and Thunder might just be the spark to light up the negativity within the fandom. And honestly, I have to agree. However, there is still some good to be said about Thor Love and Thunder. The humor, the visuals, the battles, and the characterizations all have their ups and downs here. However, the portrayals of the characters themselves from the actors, most notably Chris Hemsworth, Christian Bale, and Natalie Portman, certainly made everything good in this film work, and everything that wasn't so good a lot easier to stomach. I still like Taika's vision for Thor's revamp as a character. He was definitely getting stale after Dark World and Age of Ultron, but Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame brought the character back up to the top as a fan favorite. I like Thor and I like Taika's vision for the character, but Love and Thunder may be a great place to stop and rethink this iteration. Thor's character felt dumber than ever here, and for me, it was Chris's enjoyment and love for the character that did come across on screen that kept me smiling throughout the film. This film was fast, this film was funny, and this film was messy like most of Phase 4, but so long as the actors enjoy playing these characters and are in it for the long haul like Hemsworth, I'll always be there on opening night to see what Marvel's got next. So I know this has been a very mixed bag review / video essay on Thor Love and Thunder, but I truly am still excited to see the character again. I'm excited to see what Marvel's got cooking for us next, and I'm certainly excited to see Brett Goldstein return as Hercules. He's absolutely great in Ted Lasso, and I think the vibe he brings to the screen will translate perfectly for the character. However, I am also enjoying seeing the valid criticisms towards Marvel right now because, let's face it, they absolutely crushed it with the Infinity Saga, and as of right now, only they know what they're building towards, leaving us confused and in the dark with the jumbled mess that is Phase 4 currently. And look, I've been involved in the fandom's conversation since the beginning. I've contributed to these speculations and fan theories, and back when this whole thing started, a single movie was enough to keep us guessing for years, and now we have 5 to 6 projects a year. Fans went down the rabbit holes in the comics searching for clues. We watched and rewatched each film 100 times looking for every last Easter egg. It was a blast, and I think Marvel has been kind of focusing on quantity rather than quality lately, and I think it's time for them to reevaluate themselves and think of a change. I still have faith in Kevin Feige and his team, but I also hope that the recent criticisms will be somewhat of a wake-up call to them in that they are not too big to fail. But let's end on a lighter note for this video. I want to hear your favorite moments from Thor Love Thunder. Drop them down in the comments below and I will read them. But as always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will see you all next time.